Everyone, welcome to the Publishing Insider Summit. I hope you all had a safe trip in. I hope you had a good time at the opening cocktail parties last night. And look, there's no excuses. You should all be here on a very rich and beautiful 8 hours of sleep. This is our 10th year of running this summit, 10 years. And so to celebrate that decade of work, I thought it could be fun to call back to our very first agenda. And this is either going to be interesting to all of you or slightly horrifying in the ways in which we maybe got some things wrong or focused in the wrong ways. I'm curious, though, can anyone guess what was the hot topic 10 years ago? What had taken the publishing industry by storm? Programmatic, right away. We talked about a world where content was no longer a proxy for an audience. There was a decoupling of this idea that the intrinsic value proposition of a piece of content could tell you something about the reader. And instead, we needed to focus on harvesting all of this data about individuals to build separate monolith identities that could become separate addressable audiences. And this was the only way any of us were going to survive in this new programmatic ecosystem. Now, Joette, I'm not sure where you are in the room, but I think you're going to have a few things to say on that tomorrow for sure. And we also talked a lot about yield management, how to maximize the impression value of your inventory, how to take that traditional rate card and evolve it into something resembling dynamic pricing. We talked about publishers becoming agencies. We talked about how to become data-driven. Novel, very interesting. And we talked about this newfangled thing called video monetization, and could it become sustainable revenue? We also went snorkeling, deep-sea fishing, and we visited an alligator farm. John, what the heck? Where are those on our afternoon activities?
Airboat tour.
I think if you slip John a 50, he'll make sure you see an alligator on the airboat tour, up close and personal. This industry looks very different than it did in 2015. Those new ideas at the time, they played out, and old ideas are now starting to find that they may have legs again. Also, as a brief aside, I'm sure many of you share with me like this slight horror that 2015 was 10 years ago that just doesn't sit quite right in my brain. But look, this room is well acquainted with the challenges that drove this transformation. The proliferation of digital-first mediums, mobile's acceleration, the rise of streaming platforms, and the creator economy, and the erosion of traditional channels. And as the economies of the old models lost their footing, the industry went through this very polarized transformation. We saw the consolidation and closure, and on the other hand, we saw the diversification of revenue streams and the actual expansion of your advertising offerings. Adversity opened the door for more impactful inventory. Impressions 10 years later are no longer the name of the game. We have the opportunity to evolve and deliver solutions that drive significant conversion and performance. And your targeting has never been more intelligent. We've entered this era where the content that you consume, in turn, is consuming us. It's the flywheel of enrichment that gives you tremendously valuable data and insight into the consumer's state of mind, their interests, their intent. And while I strive to be an eternal optimist, I don't want you to mistake those silver linings for a gilded runway to fame and fortune. There are still some very steep cliffs that this industry has to climb. And so are you positioned for the next generation of content consumers? Is your content formatted, adapted, and distributed in the right ways to meet those needs of the next generation? So as a quick side tangent, because I think a lot of you may end up on Bourbon Street tonight, the New York Times just published an article where they talked about the frustrating habit of Gen Z in bars, where they're defying the traditional norms of opening a tab and keeping it open, and instead they close it after every single drink that they buy, no matter how many drinks they plan on having that night. And now, while the quoted bartender said that we need to educate Gen Z on proper bar etiquette, and in fact I think they phrased it as bully them respectfully, there's probably a far greater opportunity for the restaurants that are able to adapt and find solutions that tailor their service to this new behavior. We can grumble about new behaviors or we can rise to meet them. And are you ready for AI? Spoiler, I don't think anyone truly is, including the AI companies. I think in 35, we're going to look back at this agenda and scoff at kind of how we missed the mark in a lot of ways. But how you approach licensing, content discoverability, the integration or rejection of AI in your content life cycles is going to have reverberating effects over the next decade of your business. What's your retail strategy? How are you competing with the creator economy? And have we tried putting a paywall on our paywall? 2 for 1? Novel ideas. These are the hard questions we're going to explore over the next few days. So let's get into it. As a reminder, everything we say on the stage is recorded and on the record. A core element of what we do here at MediaPost is journalism. It is providing a platform to share and showcase the fine work that you all are putting out. But it's also the off-the-record conversations where a lot of the most enriching dialogue happens. So at noon, we do turn the cameras off and we move into our roundtables. These are the deeper off-the-record conversations where we'll dive into some of the topics you heard about on stage and have a healthy discussion with your peers. Okay, so what's in store for today? You're going to hear from Stephanie Kempadu, Director of Brand Strategy and Insights at the New York Post, on how she's building successful content universes through a unique franchise monetization strategy. And remember how a decade ago we wondered if video could actually drive sustainable revenue? Well, now you're going to hear from a panel of now experts on video monetization on how CTV has evolved in the new ways to navigate streaming. You're going to hear from a rock star panel of industry titans on the broader state of revenue portfolios, where they're winning, losing ground, and finding novel ways to diversify and generate sources of income. But first, as y'all settle in with your coffee, there's really only one place where we can reasonably start this conversation: data. Y'all got it? You probably wish you still had a little bit more of it, but it is your differentiator. It's how you distinguish your audiences and your inventory from everywhere else. And as of today, June 5th, we still have cookies, and presumably we're going to continue to have cookies. But if we hedge our bets, what does a better post-cookie platform look like? How does your data come to life in truly compelling ways to drive audience identification and performance? How does it come to life in a way that will have advertisers lining up to spend? For Hearst, the answer is their Aura platform. And so here to share how they're combining their e-commerce signals, contextual and behavioral patterns, AI, and more into a transformative targeting platform, please join me in welcoming to the stage our opening keynote speaker and Hearst's SVP of Data, Michael Nuzzo.